Looking for a dating experience where high standards are the norm? Welcome to Luxy, the exclusive dating platform where quality is key. With an acceptance rate of only 10 to 15%, Luxy is designed for individuals who seek meaningful connections with people who match their ambitions and lifestyle. Plus, Luxy's unique income verification feature adds an extra layer of assurance, creating a trusted environment to meet like minded singles. Join today to experience a premium approach to dating. Check the link in the description. Namaste and welcome back to another episode of the Sapient. Today we have someone um, who is a very literate person, right? Who is very well versed with education and has done a lot in his life, and also an author. So welcome, Nicholas. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ganesh. Thank you for having me on your program. Very excited to be here.
So how's your day going? How's everything?
So far, so good. It has been a good day. Things got weird again in America
Hmm.
after the election. So we're
Yeah.
back where we started from with weird
Hmm.
again, and we're all kind of dealing with that, particularly
Yeah.
out here in California and in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Got it. How weird is it, right? Especially for your country. Now that's the election is done, right? And there is so much time until the new president comes in.
Yeah, that's generally not weird
Yeah.
when
Hmm.
the person who loses
Hmm.
accepts having lost. And
Hmm.
up until 2020, that was an expected thing in our society. It's just sort
Hmm.
of, kind of, there's a lot in American government that depends upon the old gentleman's agreement, right?
Hmm.
And so when you finally get somebody who breaks the gentleman's agreement, as we
Hmm.
did in 2020, then it
Hmm.
calls into question a lot of things that were not codified in law, but perhaps
Hmm.
should have been codified in law and should not have just been occurring on a handshake. Um, when you have to count on people being civil, and also when you have to count on people sharing the same facts. That's
Hmm.
been a problem for a little while in America, is that we don't, we're a divided country because we don't all absorb the same facts. We don't
Hmm.
agree on those facts. In fact, I
Yeah.
remember a number of years ago there was one of Trump's campaign manager in the
Hmm.
2016 campaign coined this phrase alternative facts. Well, there is no
Hmm.
such thing, frankly, as alternative facts. There is a fact and then there is a lie.
Hmm.
So alternative facts are in fact lies, and
Hmm.
calling them alternative facts is just another word for something that we all know to be a lie. So
Hmm.
that's really the weirdness, is living in a country where someone will tell you something that is sort of manufactured within their own news bubble, but which
Hmm.
is patently untrue and easily
Hmm.
disproved, and yet they believe in it. Because it turns
Hmm.
out what people are doing in this country is they're manipulating uh, sort of the human capacity to hold on to a lie. Most
Hmm.
people will hold on to lies because if you've made the lie so integral to
Hmm.
your sense of being, then even when confronted with the fact that it's a lie, you'll still insist that it's the truth. Like people
Hmm.
now who still claim that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. He did not win the 2020 election,
Hmm.
and lost lots of lawsuits trying to
Hmm.
prove that he did win the 2020 election. But
Hmm.
and even you'd think after having won in 2024, they'd give up that lie, but they haven't given up that lie. It
Hmm.
still exists as sort of a manifest reality, even though it is not true. So that's the
Hmm.
weirdness right now that we deal with, and I'm not sure how you can have a healthy, functioning representative democracy in a
Hmm.
country where we can't agree on facts.
Nicholas, do you think this whole issue exists because US doesn't have like immediate threat outside their borders? Like you
Oh,
guys
that's
are
an
like
interesting
very
question. Yeah,
safe, right? Like
yeah.
for example, other countries are landlocked and they have to fight, right? Sometimes, and There is tension in international circles. But for us, it's rather convenient, right? Because you guys just don't have anybody else. um, do you think that's a factor?
I mean, it's not something that I've ever thought of before, but now that you bring it up, there's a definite possibility. I think that there's, along with what you're mentioning,
Hmm.
comes an American sort of an almost innate American
Hmm.
sense of global
Yeah.
supremacy.
Hmm.
Um, Listen, for any of us in this country who have traveled to other parts of the world, we
Hmm.
know that there are many other parts of the world that are cleaner, safer, and better to their citizens, have better
Hmm.
health care,
Yeah.
and are able to elect women without
Hmm.
tripping about electing a woman, for example.
Hmm.
We still have not accomplished that. There are
Yeah.
also parts of the globe that have slipped into fascism.
Hmm.
Um, we got lucky during World War II. But we got lucky, when the rest of the world, particularly Europe,
Hmm.
got people like Mussolini, Stalin, and
Hmm.
Hitler. We got FDR, who,
Yeah.
by the way, was not perfect because he
Hmm.
also removed Japanese Americans, loyal citizens, from their homes
Hmm.
and interred them in prison camps.
Hmm.
He was not perfect. He was also a bigot.
Hmm.
So it's not perfect over here, but we
Yeah.
didn't get Hitler, Mussolini, or Stalin
Hmm.
to sort of exploit a global economic depression.
Hmm.
We have Trump though now, and
Yeah.
I'm sitting here at home watching some of the riots that are going on
Hmm.
around the Jewish soccer team
Hmm.
abroad, and I'm seeing in foreign countries a
Hmm.
Trump flag, amongst
Yeah.
rioters,
Hmm.
anti-Semitic rioters, and realizing that, look, this phenomena is we're in with every other right-wing nut job running a
Hmm.
country or aspiring to run a country
Hmm.
somewhere else in the world, as long as Trump is in office out here.
Well, do you think, Nicholas, honestly, that Trump does have a kind of international appeal?
I'm not sure. I know that when I traveled abroad, and keep in mind I was only in France. So when I was in France briefly during the first Trump administration, I kept running into people who were asking me, "What happened to your country?"
Hmm.
Now, France has flirted with far right extremists and sort of a xenophobic crowd as well with
Hmm.
the whole Le Pen party. So far be it for them to cast aspersions on us,
Hmm.
but they haven't elected him yet. Okay,
Hmm.
they are seeing a little bit of a rise right now, but they haven't elected them yet, as we have now elected ours twice.
Hmm.
I'm hoping that he's not the global phenomena. It just struck me today to see a Trump
Hmm.
flag in Europe in the
Hmm.
midst of an anti-Semitic riot. That was a little disturbing.
Well, do you think they also use it as a selling point in other countries?
It's possible.
Because he's so popular, and you can definitely get eyes
Yeah,
on whatever causes you're fighting for,
yeah,
if you have an elected president's
yeah,
flag.
yeah,
That gives you the mileage and the TRP, right?
yeah. Yeah, it's possible. I don't know
Mhm.
what the world would see in him,
Well, I
particularly as he
feel.
despises so much of the world
Mhm.
outside of our borders.
Well, I feel like, right, like, because I'm an outsider, so my opinions totally sum up to zero.
Mm, not, not at
But
all.
yeah, so if you look at the world as one, right, which is the direction that we are going to, right,
That's
in
right.
some ways. um, Everybody thought that Biden would be more forgiving with other countries, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But he is probably one of the, I would say, the most aggressive presidents in terms of threatening everybody else, um, and threatening everybody with sanctions and everything.
mm.
And ironically, Trump was the guy who kind of worked with more countries.
That was how you experienced it.
Yeah, because I still remember it was like 20 days when Biden came into power, right?
Mm,
They sanctioned to threaten India, Brazil, Indonesia, like a lot of countries.
Hmm.
because everybody was buying Russian oil, right? But India is not the biggest buyer of Russian oil. The biggest purchaser or buyer of Russian oil is Europe.
That's right.
So we buy our 2% of our oil reserves from Russia, and they did not talk to us. It was not diplomatic. It was very rough. They were like, we are going to sanction you, and thankfully our government was, now it's like very cocky enough where they said, okay, go ahead, not a problem. And they had to back off, and since then, right? um, y- you know I don't know whether you're aware of BRICS or not.
No.
BRICS is like a BRICS is like a 10-12 country summit, like just like NATO, right? But the target is to get out of the dollar system, right? Like where dollar is your base currency. Um, and that happened due to this Biden's whole, I would say, the drama, right, with just threatening people, because the world doesn't work like that, because it's not like 1980s anymore.
Right, right,
Right?
right, right.
But back in when Trump was there, right? um, it was better in terms of international relations. I really don't know about domestic, because I'm not a domestic person, but I feel like that's why a lot of foreigners like Trump, because it kind of affects them too, right?
How do you feel about Trump's current rhetoric around imposing tariffs?
Well, it's interesting, but I don't know how a democracy works. Like, I don't think it would be that easy to pass it,
Well,
right?
it's true. It may be. It depends. They'll have a very narrow lead
Hmm.
in the House. It's still up for grabs in the House, technically, but they're projecting that the Republicans will ultimately triumph and have a very narrow majority. And then, of course, those offices, many of those will be up again in 2 years. You elect them every
Hmm.
2 years. The
Yeah.
Senate, they have their majority. Um,
But the next administration can just change it as soon as they come in,
It's
right?
true. It's true. But one of the things that Trump did run on was imposing tariffs
Yeah.
on foreign
Hmm.
goods, and
Yeah.
so we'll
I
see how
like
that
that, to be
plays out.
honest. I like that, to be honest. Because let me tell you, right, back in 2014, India was so similar to US in terms of dependency of products, China and other countries.
Hmm.
And then we took a call in saying, because China is our literal enemy, right? Like they're literally next to us. So they were grabbing our lands. So, India made a conscious decision of make in India. It's a movement where India is trying to come up with all the products that we require in day-to-day life. And now the result is, we have our own private space, like just like SpaceX, right? A space company.
Yes, you do.
And now we have started to export a lot of stuff, that was imported before, in just 10 years. So I feel like, yeah, going local, right, in terms of manufacturing, even by forcing tariffs. In India it's the same, right? If you buy a Chinese goods, it's going to cost you so much more. Like, it's like, the taxation is like 300%, I think. So
So India imposes pretty strict tariffs on you.
yeah, so that way, you are forced to buy either other countries goods or Indian goods.
Mhm.
And yeah, that has worked, because India is a very cost conscious market. So, and I hope US is too. And now when they see that there is
Oh,
so
we
much
are. Yeah,
tariff,
yeah,
right, just
yeah.
just use local, just use your own businesses.
That's the gambit. Is that
Hmm.
that imposing tariffs will do that? But then remember that this country, our country, the United States here, has lost a lot of its manufacturing base, and that's not just because of a failure to impose tariffs. That's also because of things like North American Free Trade Agreement,
Hmm.
where a lot of that got exported out to our neighbors,
Yeah.
Mexico, with
Hmm.
its giant factories now, and the rest of Central America and Latin America.
Hmm.
So I don't know that that's ever coming back. For a long time, the left in this country has really considered how America can develop new industries. Instead
Mhm.
of sort of pining for older manufacturing, can we get
Mhm.
into newer industries like solar,
Mhm.
tech, things like that, wind?
But I
Um,
still don't think so.
well,
Yeah.
it's interesting because the Biden administration has helped bring back some manufacturing. This didn't
Mhm.
happen actually during the first Trump administration. Trump promised it, but we
Mhm.
continued losing manufacturing. He also
Mhm.
had an opportunity to kind of tweak NAFTA, and
Mhm.
whatever tweaks they made to NAFTA were not helpful. It
Mhm.
is, however, that group of people in this country who are the angriest
Mhm.
and more than likely to be
Mhm.
Trump voters, even if Trump policies have not actually helped them.
Mhm.
Trump campaigning has spoken
Uh-huh.
to their grievances and their culture of grievance, but Trump policies aren't doing much.
Mhm.
The tax cuts for the wealthy, etc. They're not doing much. I don't know if the tariffs will do it either.
Mhm.
There's a fear in this country that all the tariffs will do in the short run is just drive up the prices of all goods at a time when
Mhm.
when wages haven't come up yet to meet the rate of inflation.
Mhm. But let me ask you this, right? It's a two-part question.
Sure.
One, that America has never tried this kind of tariff system, right?
I've tried it
Um,
off and on at
I mean,
periods. Yeah.
sorry, in recent times,
Yeah,
when
that's right.
you guys have not tried it, and now that you're trying to build the whole, um, the auto, sorry, the car industry back and everything else, right? In Detroit and in all the industrial hub cities.
Yes.
Um, Now there needs to be a stricter action, right, to help local businesses, definitely, right, by law. And the second question is, you mentioned how Trump appealed to those people, right, who were at a loss.
Hmm.
Do you think it's like the whole Kamala machine just didn't work because it just didn't connect with people, because she has been off the ground for 4 years, like she has lost the
Yeah.
touch because
So that's a very
yeah.
good question, and I think there's a couple of things. Is that when we take a look back at losing all seven of the swing states,
Hmm.
the fact is that if she had won the blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, she probably would have been on her way to a narrow electoral college victory and a popular vote loss. She
Hmm.
lost those states by 2%. So
Hmm.
we have this narrative right now, a couple of weeks after the election, she got slaughtered, this and that. Actually, that's
Hmm.
not really the truth. The truth
Hmm.
is that she lost by 2%
Hmm.
in states that she needed to win in order to win the electoral college. And
Hmm.
yet at the same time, she was running as a representative of an administration that had high unfavorables because of inflation,
Hmm.
that where wages had not yet come up to meet the rate of inflation. Rate of inflation
Hmm.
has declined dramatically in this country, but wages have not yet met it. So
Hmm.
people still are feeling inflation. Prices don't come down.
Yeah.
Wages have to come up to meet them. The only thing that's happened is the rate of inflation has slowed
Hmm.
down. People don't really understand that in this country. And then the other piece is that she's a black and South Asian woman. And so, and would not only be the first woman that we elect
Hmm.
in a country that's frankly extremely patriarchal, but
Hmm.
would also be a black and South Asian mixed race woman doing
Hmm.
that, and also had to run 100-day campaign. So
Hmm.
even facing those headwinds, which
Hmm.
would stop anyone's campaign,
Hmm.
she still came within 2 percentage points in blue
Hmm.
wall states of getting an electoral college victory. So at
Hmm.
the end of the day, while it looks initially like a wipeout, when you really kind of drill down,
Hmm.
um, given the headwinds that she was facing, she may have done a little bit better than we think, or
Hmm.
certainly not as badly as was first considered in the immediate aftermath of the election.
Yeah. Um, well, let me ask you this, right? Um, in Trump's era, there was COVID, right? like,
Yes, which he
literally the world
horribly
was stopped.
mishandled. Right.
Yeah, but your country survived out of it, right?
Yeah, we
And
survived.
now when we are looking at the Biden administration, and we say, like, they had a tough time, right? And if you really look at it and you ask the question of, uh, what was the, the primary thing that you suffered with? Was there a big thing, like, was there one big event that affected people,
Well, okay,
right, for the administration? Then the
yeah,
answer is, Biden administration successfully, successfully changed the terms of economic depression,
yes.
just to keep the brand administration going on, right? Do you think that at this point of time both parties are pretty much same? They just sell what they want to sell, and they do something else.
Yes and no. Okay,
Hmm.
there are differences between the two parties. There are differences in policy between the two parties. Um, but I would say that there is an American machinery, and there are
Hmm.
some things that don't change in the American machinery.
Hmm.
We are an imperialist nation.
Hmm.
We remain so.
Hmm.
That policy doesn't change for the most part from administration to administration.
Hmm.
Now, Democrats may give you for example, Harris will give you some acknowledgement of
Hmm.
what's happening to Palestinians,
Hmm.
Palestinian children, in fact, who are not responsible for any
Hmm.
attacks on Israelis. You won't get any of that discussion with the Trump administration. Okay,
Well,
that's
here's
a
my.
difference in tone. It's not really a difference in
But
policy.
Nicholas, does it really matter? Like,
No,
do you
no, it
think,
doesn't. The
do
tone, and that's why I say
uh-huh,
tone as
uh-huh,
opposed to policy. Another area here is that you'll get consistent tax cuts for
hmm,
income earners above $400,000 under a
hmm,
Republican administration, and
hmm,
nothing or very little for people below $400,000 in a non-Republican administration. Those are some differences that have meant a lot in this country since the Reagan era,
hmm,
which, I lived through this. I was a teenager during the Reagan era and then in college.
hmm,
And I watched the evisceration of the middle class in this country at
hmm,
the behest of those kinds of tax policies, the
hmm,
supply side tax policies. So there are some differences in policy like
hmm,
that. And there's differences in tone, but there is a machinery to America that continues apace, no matter
hmm,
who's running the country. Arms are still going to, parts of the world that we're supposed to be defending.
hmm.
I singled out Israel, but that perhaps is not fair
Let me
because
ask you
there's
this,
a lot
right?
of parts of the world to which our arms are still going,
Yeah.
no matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican in office.
Do you think it's time for US to say, let's not worry about the world, let's start fixing our shit first?
Sure, I think there are a lot of Americans who feel this way, but this country is always, this is not a new thing. This country has always vacillated between isolationism and being the world's policeman. And we go back and forth and back and forth. And this is where
Yeah,
we
because
were.
it's just convenient, right?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of this is sort of the political winds of the time. We've had to be convinced to go to war,
Hmm.
whether that's the sinking of the Maine or the bombing of Pearl Harbor. We've had this. Our population has been isolationist at moments and wanting to just be invested in our people, our citizens, our politics, our
Hmm.
economics, and our uplift.
Hmm.
But there's we're still an empire, right?
Hmm.
We started to aspire to be an empire in the late 1800s, and then
Hmm.
emerged as the dominant empire in the world in the wake of World War II. Whether
Hmm.
America is still that empire that it was in the wake of World War II
Yeah,
today
I
is
don't
an
think so.
arguable point. I don't think that it is either.
Yeah,
I think
it's
I would
it's
agree
not
with you
in.
on that.
Yeah, in today's world, US is more of a clown circus
Hmm.
than actual power,
Yeah.
right? Because like, American healthcare is famously fucked,
Yes, it is.
right? and lot of cities who have rapid homelessness spend billions not solving the problem, right?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
that kind of exposes the underbelly of the US society, where you're like, okay, then you know what's really going on, right? And I don't think anybody is asking these questions. They're just more concerned about which party do I vote.
Yeah, these are good. This is a good area to pursue in this in your podcast here. So so I've written. I'm an academic. I'm a professor, but in order to appeal to sort of a wider audience, I've written a detective novel set here in Oakland. And one of the
Hmm.
things I'm trying to do in that novel is I'm trying to talk about some of the issues that you just mentioned. I
Hmm.
have my first novel's come out, People's Detective, and it's about sex trafficking here in the streets of Oakland. This is a form of slavery, okay? A problem
Hmm.
that we see globally, and we definitely have it here. We have it here
Hmm.
in the space where I live. It's one of the third hotspots. The second book, which I am writing right now, is about homelessness in the
Hmm.
streets around me here in Northern California. These are,
Hmm.
are are problems that a lot of the world deals with, and
Hmm.
here we are, the great empire, and we deal with them as much as any other part of the world deals
Hmm.
with these issues too.
Yeah.
For example, a couple of years ago, well, really in 2023, okay, there were
Hmm.
over 36 million reports in this country of
Hmm.
just child sexual exploitation alone. With the
Hmm.
region that I live in, Oakland, Alameda County, the San Francisco Bay Area, this region being the third highest hotspot in the country.
Hmm.
And that has a lot to do with the fact that we have a large Pacific port to which a
Hmm.
lot of goods flow. We were just talking about
Yeah.
tariffs and the flow of goods. Well, human trafficking flows through those ports too,
Hmm.
illegally, and through
Yeah.
the country across the
Hmm.
highways. And look, there's an estimated hundred. There's anywhere from 100,000 to about 300,000 people who are victims of this every single year in the United
Hmm.
States alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I also read a report that said there are more people more people affected from human trafficking in today, right, in today's world than
That's right.
ever in the history of the
That's right.
earth.
That's right. It's a continuation of something that we think
Hmm.
globally
Doesn't
that we've
exist.
gotten rid of. Yeah, we
Yeah.
think it doesn't exist, but it's a continuation of something
Hmm.
that it is basically, Ganesh. It is slavery.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the way that I wanted to deal with it fictionally. And there were reasons why I decided to do this through fiction as opposed
Hmm.
to through an academic book. And some of that, well, everything about that had to do with access and cost.
Hmm.
I write a piece of fiction, and frankly, I can sell that for less, right?
Hmm.
More
Yeah.
people can get access to it, right? My academic books, you're going to spend $30 for them. A piece of fiction, you're going to spend
Hmm.
less than half, and then a
Yeah.
third of that if you're just using an ebook. And then you can get
Hmm.
it used at some point in time. So I can
Yeah.
get a wider readership and get people concerned. And the other
Hmm.
thing I wanted to do was I wanted to plug the narrative. I wanted to plug with the narrative. I wanted to plug organizations that are fighting this. So the end
Hmm.
of my novel has a glossary
Hmm.
of excuse me, an appendix of
Hmm.
organizations that are fighting sex trafficking here in this region and
Hmm.
throughout the United States.
Yeah. Do you think there needs to be more like harsh and stricter law around this issue?
Yes, I do, and much more enforcement attention to it. Listen,
Hmm.
all the global problems that we began your podcast discussing, particularly
Hmm.
the larger global economic problems, where the
Hmm.
rubber meets the road on any of our streets, is in
Hmm.
problems like this
Yeah.
around people being trafficked.
Hmm.
This doesn't exist if there isn't money to be made. And
Yeah.
slavery is something that has always made money. And
Yeah.
it has always been the gift that keeps on giving. One
Hmm.
slave who can be used over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
in perpetuity,
Yep.
and then killed, frankly, when the police are hot on your trail.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're facing, I think this is part of the broader global economic crises that we've
Mm-hmm.
seen, and the concentrations of wealth that we've seen in this world, in the United
Yeah.
States and abroad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, it's also kind of worrying when governments don't give a shit about it, right?
That's
Like
right.
they're like, yeah, this problem exists. We could do something, but we're just not going to do anything, right?
Yes, and I think the interesting question about that is, so okay, in writing a piece of fiction, I have to speculate. Okay, there's a lot that's
Mm-hmm.
speculative, and one
Yeah.
of the things, I'm not going to give away the plot because I'd love for your listeners to read this,
Mm-hmm.
but look, in speculating about this, there's this fundamental question of why does this continue?
Mm-hmm.
For example, another phenomena that's parallel to this that continues is femicide in places
Mm-hmm.
like Mexico to our southern border.
Mm-hmm.
It just continues. You're in,
Yeah.
you're out. You never catch
Mm-hmm.
anyone. So I try to answer this question in the novel. And my answer, in short, for this
Mm-hmm.
is it continues because powerful people are protecting it. So
Yeah.
if you want to know why it's not stopping,
Mm-hmm.
it's because there are people who are profiting from this, who
Yeah.
are powerful. Now
Exactly.
they're not on the street doing this, but they're
Yeah.
somewhere up the chain, right?
Uh,
We're not just talking
they
about.
get their cut.
That's correct. They get their cut. These are not
Mm-hmm.
petty criminals on the
Yeah.
streets, but
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, and the petty criminals may not even know to whom they're ultimately connected. But it's kind of like the drug trade, and
Yeah.
this is the only trade, sex
Mm-hmm.
trafficking, that is second to the drug trade. It's just right
Yeah.
behind the drug trade. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
we know how
Yeah.
profitable that has been globally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we know that there are very powerful people up the chain who
Yeah.
are running for offices, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean, who are in government,
Yeah.
who are aware that this is going on, who are taking
Mm-hmm.
their taste and then
Yeah.
some, and who will
Mm-hmm.
never be arrested.
Yeah.
And so
And
that's
and
why.
even if they're convicted and arrested, they just disappear,
That's correct. Yeah, and
right?
and this is why. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so this is what I speculate on in the book. And I
Mm-hmm.
speculate on this too. The way that I deal with this is that there's a little bit of Oakland history that I get into as well,
Mm-hmm.
in kind of exploring the depths of who might be behind this. But I do portray a city government, policing structure, and a structure of authorities that are in on the game.
Mm-hmm.
Their hands are, and that has been reported out here. We've had recently
Mm-hmm.
Oakland police who have been tried for
Mm-hmm.
sexually exploiting and trafficking
Mm-hmm.
a an underage prostitute. These are
Mm-hmm.
our police that
Yeah.
have been involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think that just officers on the street are doing this without
Mm.
anybody knowing, in
Yeah.
fact, Ganesh, one last thing I'll say about this is that I was at a book fair
Mm-hmm.
last year, and this was sort of I was getting people to sort of look through the first draft of the novel. And there was a
Mm-hmm.
I was in San Francisco for this, and there was a San Francisco police officer, retired police officer, who came by my table. And I said, this guy's, I said to myself, he's going to hate this, okay? Because, I
Mm-hmm.
give the Oakland police a pretty rough time for their history
Mm-hmm.
of corruption. I mean, it's all out there. We know that they're corrupt and they've been corrupt. He stops by the table, and instead, I tell him about the narrative, and he says, listen, I used to work Vice in San Francisco. And he says, I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
you that what you're writing about here is happening. And he said, even
Mm-hmm.
when I worked Vice, he said he found a motorcycle cop who was
Mm-hmm.
trafficking women
Mm-hmm.
and then dumping their bodies off on the side of the road. Use and abuse people. And when he came to punish them, he'd drive them on out and dump them off on some road,
Mm-hmm.
headed somewhere in Northern California, right? And he said what he didn't report the guy because, of course, they have their code of blue and they're not going to report one another. But he said what he
Mm-hmm.
did was he beat him up, put him in the trunk of his car, and drove him
Yeah.
out somewhere and dumped him off the
Mm-hmm.
side of the road. Now,
Mhm.
structurally, that did nothing. But
Yep.
what he was letting me know was I was on to what's really happening here, that everybody's
Hmm.
involved.
Yeah. Here's a funny thing about fictional book about real problems.
Yeah,
Um, uh, Whenever I talk to somebody who has written fiction about a real problem, they say that, I imagined the worst and wrote this book. Um, but I wrote this book like 2 years ago, and I thought this would happen in 10 years. Like
that's
this
right.
bad thing would happen in 10 years, but
Yeah,
it's already happening.
yeah, yeah. That happened to me,
Um,
Ganesh. I wrote this, I got it published, and then the news came out about Sean Puffy Combs, a
mhm,
rapper out here who you guys are probably familiar with as well. You
mhm.
probably have heard a fair amount of the music that he's produced. And turns out that,
Y- You know what? To be honest, I have never heard to his music.
yeah,
I,
you're
I
not
never
missing
listened to his
anything.
music.
You're not missing anything. You're good. Don't worry about it, okay? Don't let it keep you up at night, okay?
Yeah, I'll try. I'll try.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you think he's also going to like disappear like Epstein?
Yeah, I think either that or he'll just never talk about people above him who knew that
Hmm.
this was going on. But
Yeah, of course. That's
yeah,
that's a certainty, right? Like he
mhm,
won't speak about that. But
he can't.
do you think? Yeah, it's too expensive.
It is too expensive. And you listen, but your logical mind tells you there's no way that he's throwing these parties on the regular and the Los
Yeah,
Angeles Police Department doesn't know that he's
doesn't know
throwing these
about it.
parties. There's
Yeah.
logically that makes absolutely no sense.
Hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody knows that this is happening. And if you've ever been to
Hmm.
LA and been around people who are in those circles, you know
Hmm.
exactly what I mean. Everybody knows what's
Yeah.
going on. It's a
But also
insular
it's like
community.
this, right? If it was in like the middle of nowhere where he owned like 1,000 acres, and
Sure.
yeah, of course nobody would know about it. But he's in a city,
Right,
right?
right, right. In the middle of it, and
Yeah,
there's all kinds of people showing up from all kinds of different
yeah.
industries. You know.
And if like United States can find out a terrorist sitting in his bunker, I'm pretty sure you can find out a 100 people party in a city.
I mean, yeah, you can. Yeah, and
But
your analogy is perfect. If you can find some guy in a bunker somewhere
yeah.
in the middle of nowhere, you definitely know what's
Hmm.
going on with Sean Combs. Come on, there's
Right
just
in your own city.
in your own city,
Yeah,
but listen, and it's been going on for years.
yeah.
Okay, there's no way that people don't know about this.
Hmm.
But this happens quite a bit.
Hmm.
Um, the same thing can be said of any powerful person who you later find
uh,
out has been to these parties. The Epstein parties, the island where
yeah, yeah.
look, Donald Trump was at these
Hmm.
events. There's pictures of him at these events. Uh, we've never bothered to ask him what did he do at these events.
Yeah, I mean Epstein is like
You know,
party. He's a non-partisan person. He likes
he's not.
everybody of all parties, right?
Absolutely. Because the thing with doing that is that you get an opportunity to compromise everybody. And I
Yeah.
could make the argument to you that the reason why we don't know what Trump did at these parties is because nobody wants you to know what Clinton did at these parties. So
Hmm.
I mean, there's maybe some Democrats at this thing, and high placed
Yeah.
Democrats, and some high placed Republicans at this thing, and so we have the
Yeah.
gentleman's
Because
agreement. We're not going to talk about
mm,
this.
yeah, because politics is a business.
Correct.
It's literally like wrestling. You need a heel and a face,
You do. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And one cannot survive without the other.
Yeah. And I think that it's really like a business if you consider that everybody who enters into politics comes out of
Well, you guys have
politics
the term
with
of
money when they're
uh,
done.
yeah, and you guys have the term of calling someone a career politician.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
the heck that's a term I do not understand, because it's like this, right? Like I do social service, so, and that's my profession. Like profession is something that you earn from, right? And social work is something that you do out of your responsibility for the society,
That's right. That's right. No,
right?
the if you read the so along with our Constitution,
Yeah.
there were notes and
Hmm.
documents that were written that go. There's sort of a companion piece to that, and some of the discussions that people had around that were this notion that everybody would get to serve. Now, keep in mind, this is still a time in America when they're putting together the government where they only consider that white males are going to be
Hmm.
participating in the government and voting, and specifically white property owning males in the very, very
Hmm.
beginning. Okay,
Yeah.
now, but there was this notion of what you call public service. You're going to go
Hmm.
in, and then in Washington
Yeah.
demonstrate this. You go in, you serve your 2 terms, you're out. You
Yeah.
don't do the career thing. Right
Hmm.
now, we've got folks who are saying, you know what? I'm 80. Let's keep the
Yeah.
thing going. Okay. Let's run for
Biden.
another term. Yeah. Biden and now Trump is about to be
Yeah.
the oldest inaugurated president in American history. At 78 years of age, and he'll die at 82, 83. So he'll be the oldest, absolute oldest.
Hmm.
There's no point.
Yeah.
And what's
Hmm.
interesting is that young people
Yeah.
are electing old ass men
Yeah. Because they
to
don't have
these
other
offices.
options, though, Nicholas. They don't have
Well,
other options.
there are options. There's, I think,
Hmm.
a lack of creativity around those options, but there are options. Younger people
Hmm.
can run. We have
Yeah.
had younger people running
Hmm.
before. I mean,
But
God,
they
for God, this is
withdrew.
a country that produced, John Kennedy. We can
Yeah.
do this. No one.
Hmm.
You don't have to be 78 to run
Yeah.
for the office.
Hmm. Yeah, but lot of candidates also withdraw
And
who
by
are
the
young.
way, Kamala Harris was younger. I mean, she was
Yeah.
in her late 50s. You
Yeah,
know.
to be honest, I really feel like Kamala really failed in her marketing
Well,
area.
she had 100 days, and he had been
Yeah, but it
campaigning for
doesn't
4 years.
matter. It's like
It
this,
does
right?
actually matter.
Because it's like, two people are writing exams, and you say, yeah, you failed because you did not prepare, good enough. Like, you had 4 years, you were in power, you could have given good subsidies at the end, at least to market better, but she did not.
Well, here's the thing: in America, vice presidents don't do much, and they don't get much
Hmm.
glory. And
Yeah.
the real fault here is with Biden, who initially said, "I'm going to be a one-term president. I'm going to pass it on," and then he took that back. As if he had stuck to I'm going to be a one-term president and pass it on, she would have been able to ramp things up for 4 years. And actually,
Hmm.
we didn't know until 100 days out before the election that he wasn't going to run because
Hmm.
he ran. He
Yeah,
ran.
because he doesn't know what is the like day and the time, you know
Well,
at the moment.
it's not. I don't think it's
you
really
know
that bad, to be honest with you, that he doesn't know the
uh-huh.
day and the time. But
Hmm.
the thing about Biden that no one gives him any slack for, Biden has a speech impediment. Okay, this is a country.
Yeah,
I'm just speaking about America. I
but
don't know how this
but
works in the rest of the world, but people are
mhm,
not tolerant of disability in this
yeah,
country. So he
but the
has a
same
speech.
person has been but the same person has been sexist and racist on tape.
Sure.
And still, people like him, and talk about him as if he's the next savior. uh, and I hate that
You talking
whenever
about Trump?
people, you, sounds like it.
I
But
mean, 'cause,
I'm talking
that's
about the
what you
both
meant
men.
by sexist and racist. Yeah, I mean,
No, I was talking about
I don't
Biden.
know. Yeah, I don't know where. I mean, Biden has said some things in the past,
He
uh,
has said a
but you,
lot of things
but you know what I
on
think?
Congress flow, on record, on tape,
Yeah,
on
I think
campaigns, right?
that
um
that
no,
black.
the reason I'm saying that is, right,
Mhm.
for a common man or a woman, there is really not much choice.
Um, well, as long as we have a two-party system, a duopoly, you're right. There isn't much choice.
Yeah, even in India we have like 100 political parties, but situation is still the same.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you have only two choices, there really isn't much of a choice.
Hmm.
And over time, one of the things that you learn, and I know that India has learned this as well, is
Mm-hmm.
that over time, there isn't much to distinguish one
Mm-hmm.
choice from the other. There are some things to distinguish one choice from the other, but not as
Mm-hmm.
much. The other piece is that it's not just that you only have two choices, it's
Mm-hmm.
that you can't, it's very difficult to form new coalitions. Now, they do
Yeah.
get kind of formed. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
Obama coalition, for example, was not the Clinton coalition.
Mm-hmm.
The coalition that Harris was putting together was not the
Mm-hmm.
Biden coalition. The Biden coalition was not technically the Obama coalition. They're slightly different voters, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not as radical as you might see in a more parliamentary system,
Yeah.
where you're called upon to create to be very much more creative in the
Mm-hmm.
coalitions that you're going to build.
Yeah, but they're more interested in how much they can take home.
Yes, yes, yes. But what are we to do, Ganesh? You know, we
Mm-hmm.
can't remain cynics as we live in representative
Yeah.
democracies, and we definitely don't want fascism.
Uh-huh.
We don't. I know in this country, I don't want white Christian nationalist theocracy. You know, I'll just be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see that. I can't live here if that's what
Mm-hmm.
the government becomes at some point in time, because it
Yeah.
automatically erases my existence
Mm-hmm.
from the history of this country. And I've been here. My family's been here longer than any of these people who claim that, I shouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are we
You know,
supposed to do?
I read a very interesting fact that said the most successful traders, like stock traders, on the planet is an American congressman or a woman.
Oh, sure, but that's
They
a
are the most successful
that's a
because
question of opportunity and knowing when the
I don't
opportunity
think
is going to
so.
happen before it happens.
Yeah, it's blatant insider trading.
That's correct. That's why I use the word opportunity. It is
Yeah.
absolutely blatant
Do
insight.
you want to know the percentage that they get in return of their investments?
No, I'm sure that it's quite high.
Yeah, it's 638%.
Yeah, that makes sense. Over time, yeah, that makes sense.
No, no,
But that's
no,
how
not
people.
over time.
That's how
On an
people.
average trade,
That
on an average
on an average
trade,
trade.
a congressman makes 638%.
Yeah, I mean, but that's how you walk in without anything, and then you
Yeah,
walk out wealthy.
with everything,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I'm thinking about, for example, Congressman Paul Ryan, who had to. I think he borrowed against his family Social Security money or something like that in order to go to
Hmm.
school, and then he comes out of Congress. He's wealthy. I mean, he is absolutely
Yeah.
stinking wealthy. And yes, it's a question of, listen, if I'm right now sitting down and I'm writing a law
Hmm.
about something, every law
Yeah.
that I write is going to take a certain amount of time to take effect. But
Yeah.
I can get in on the ground floor
Yeah.
before it takes effect. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
That's a literal definition of insider trading, which is somehow legal, right?
Yes, it's illegal slash legal. If you can get away with
Yeah.
it, everything in America is built on this. I mean, this is why F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel, The Great Gatsby, is really the true American story. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've ever read that book, but it's the story of a bootlegger and his rise to
Hmm.
respectable society. There's, somebody
Hmm.
who sold illegal liquor when liquor used to be illegal in America. Now, the truth of the matter is that a lot of American fortunes are built on crime. The Kennedy family fortune, for example, was built on crime. Most
Hmm.
American fortunes are built on crime. If you go back to stealing land away from indigenous people, okay,
Yeah.
or slavery, right?
Hmm.
All of which constitute criminal acts. So
Yeah.
American fortunes are built on that. The key is, as you
Hmm.
just said, can you get in on the ground floor? Because that's where the real
Yeah.
money is being made.
Hmm. So
Once
when
it
are you
gets
planning
sold
to be the
to you and me,
congressman?
what's that?
When are you planning to be the next congressman?
I'm not planning on being next congressman. Although my colleague, I have a colleague, a coworker who ran for Congress this session. She did not win, but she did pull down about
Well,
40% of the vote.
yeah, if they won, they could certainly give us some tips as
Ganesh,
how to trade.
exactly. I'm just doing my thing. You know what I mean? Part of it for me is
Hmm.
just what's the best balanced life that I can live, right? I've
Hmm.
got I've
Yeah.
got my little slice of what I need for myself and my family We did it the honest
Hmm.
way. Hey, it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, but it's also right at this point of time. Um, you know, like if you look at the whole situation, it is so easy to be a pessimist,
Absolutely. But you can't be.
right? Yeah, you can't be, because that's reality. You cannot be pessimistic.
That's correct. You have to
It's
get
like
up and you have to keep fighting.
yeah, it's like being sad on your own, um, you know, happiest day. You created the sadness.
But the thing is, Ganesh, you can do something. Everyone listening, you can do something in your community. It might be a small act. We were talking, for example, about my book and sex trafficking. Okay, fine. If this is going on in your community, um, do something to help spread awareness about this. Okay,
Hmm.
get
Yeah.
involved with a local community group that spreads
Yeah.
awareness or some other issue in
Hmm.
your community. There's going to be some small thing that you can do that
Yeah.
brings some joy into somebody else's life in your community. And by doing that, you help yourself as well. You make your world
Hmm.
a better place. So there are still things we can do. The absolute worst thing you can do is to be so locked down in cynicism that it drives you
Hmm.
to inaction. And that is
Yeah.
precisely, I think, what the sort of craven political
Hmm.
actors that we deal with all the time would like
Yeah.
for us to do. To not only
Hmm.
ignore what they're doing as they, sit there eating like pigs from the trough, but
Hmm.
also, to just be fall into a coma of inaction.
Hmm.
So we can't do. So we refuse to do that. And listen, I
Yeah.
didn't. I did not. Obviously, you can tell from this talk, I did not vote for this nonsense for Donald Trump.
Hmm.
Um, in my own small way, when there's pain created, as there was during the first administration, I'll do what I
Hmm.
can to resist that.
Yeah.
And that's what I have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah, because if I was American, I'd be voting Trump.
I think if you were American, you might not be, actually. You might not be.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know.
outside, you think that you might be, but
But Nicholas, there is a reason
reality
he
of this on
won.
the reality of this on the ground is a little different.
Yeah, but the reality, he did win.
Yeah,
So
and
majority of people did like him,
yeah, that's correct. But that doesn't mean
right? Because he did. Uh-huh.
that you have to. And the thing is, you brought up COVID earlier. Ganesh, it was an absolute shit show in this country around his
Hmm.
mismanagement of COVID and
Hmm.
interpreting COVID, a pandemic,
Hmm.
as an affront to his personality and to
Hmm.
deal with it politically. And then to talk to us about taking ivermectin or putting disinfectant in the body or a light in the body, things like that, or asking people stupid questions like, can you fire a nuclear missile at a hurricane, and all kinds of
Hmm.
nonsense. I mean, he's an absolute idiot. He's not going to manage well. He didn't manage well then, and he left. Everybody seems to have forgotten January 6th. The last that we saw of him at his last administration, he was leaving D.C. with 25,000 National Guard troops guarding our government buildings. It was an absolute shit show here. And I get it. Americans
Do
care.
you think the other party got so desperate that they did that? Like, this is like an unfiltered question from my side,
Say,
because it
could you repeat
almost
it?
feels like, um, do you think the other party was so desperate to get back in power that they had to do everything in their power to kind of, you know take things in their favor? Because it is very clear from outset that Biden's administration is probably the worst one in recent times.
On what basis?
Well, on a simple fact or a theory that, you know the Biden administration recategorized or literally redefined an economic depression. They say no, no, if inflation goes to a certain percent, it's not economic depression anymore.
I mean, technically,
We don't learn.
by any measure, we weren't in an economic
Well, you
depression.
were. Well, you were.
We were at the end of
That's
the
the
Trump
point.
administration,
Yeah, because
but
that was
we
COVID. But
engaged
during
in.
Biden administration, you guys literally, not you guys, but the American government literally redefined economic depression.
What they did was they
Do
engaged.
you? So no, no. So my question is, do you think how careless that is in terms of the worldview? It is so selfish to the core that I am going to redefine something just so that the federal bank, the federals, but also world as one is going to suffer from this one small decision.
Yeah, I'm a little confused at the question. I mean, so we engaged in uh, deficit spending, which actually
Mhm,
began under the Trump
mhm,
administration when he started issuing checks to folks that he had to
mhm,
sign, by the way. He couldn't just let the treasurer sign them. When we
mhm,
started issuing COVID checks to folks, which was kind of like
mhm.
a little taste of a universal basic income during that
Yeah.
administration. So the deficit spending
Mhm.
actually started under the Trump administration. Um,
Yeah, but wouldn't you say that was like justified because of the stuff that we were going through?
yeah, and for the same reason, it was justified into the Biden administration, the early years of the Biden administration. The exigent conditions remained. I mean, we were still clawing our way out of COVID. So it
Yes.
didn't; those conditions didn't change the minute that Biden walked
Uh-huh.
into the door.
Well, then, in if conditions didn't change, then why did this administration wanted to redefine the status or the indicators of depression? Let me tell you why I'm worried about that, right? Because every 2% that the Fed rate goes up, suicide rate also goes up by 5 to 6%, and it's
Yeah,
not only US.
I've not seen that link to between the suicide rate and the Fed rate.
Yeah, that's
And also,
it's not
the Fed has been lowering the rate, by the way, too. So
yeah.
the suicide
Yeah,
rate going down.
they have lowered for the last 3 quarters. That's what they
Yeah,
did.
yeah, they
Before
have.
that, they were not cutting the rates; they were just
That's
increasing, right?
correct.
So my kind of whole approach to this is just be honest, right? Like if a country is going through something, you just say, yeah, we are going through a particular thing,
Yeah,
right? Try not to redefine everything,
yeah.
so just so that
It's
it
the
favors you.
it's the your definition of redefinition that I'm a little confused about.
Well, let me tell you this, right? Okay, what do you in dollar value, right? How much do you think a person needs to earn if they're middle class?
It depends on where you live. Okay, if you live where I
No,
live,
just an estimation. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, America's incredibly varied. If you
yeah,
live
yeah. I know that.
where,
Uh,
yeah, so if you live where I live, which is one of the
mhm,
pricier areas in the country, you are talking
mhm.
about 125, $150,000. So
Right
that's
now,
comfortable.
let's say that.
But that doesn't
Now,
apply if you live in, say, Montana. You don't need
yeah, yeah.
as
No,
much. Yeah.
I'm just using this as an example. If you said that 150K, right, is what you need to earn to be a middle class family,
Hmm.
and let's say we made that as a law. And if tomorrow, when the wages go down for some reason, I will redefine that and I will say, you know what? Now a middle class is 110K, 90K, 80K. Now I just redefined the law, right? And I just made at least 20% more people, who were poor, the middle class,
Yeah,
just by redefining the law.
yeah, you're playing with numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my point.
So
If
I'm not
if
sure where the
if
Biden
the Fed
administration
rate
did that.
yeah if the Fed rate just were shooting up
Hmm.
and we were heading towards an economic depression, you call it as economic depression or heading towards economic depression. You just don't redefine the numbers and say, no, everything is hunky-dory over here. Everything is awesome, right? You guys keep going to the work, and you know um, even though the world gets affected by it, I am very happy that my administration is safe from this.
So you're complaining about the Fed manipulating rates?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you know that happens during any administration. The Fed is
Not
constantly,
not.
and the Fed is supposed to be working independently
Hmm.
of the political machinery, but it does happen during every administration that the
Uh-huh.
Fed, because what the Fed is doing is the Fed is manipulating the economy. I mean, that is essentially the role of the Fed. Raising
Hmm.
those rates is about slowing down the rate of borrowing and attempting to slow down the rate of inflation. So,
Hmm.
and they do that independently. And a president doesn't tell the Fed when to raise rates or not. At
Hmm.
least never, it may have happened, but at least
Hmm.
never openly. You appoint somebody to run the Fed. Um, that person does what they do based on their particular understanding of economics
Hmm.
in this country. It's,
Hmm.
it's explicitly not supposed to be a politically controlled thing, so that the president
Well.
doesn't have the ability to come in and say, "I need you to lower the rate down to another quarter of a point, basis point."
Hmm.
That is not the way
Hmm.
it's supposed to work. And the rate.
Well, let me tell you this, right?
Hmm.
In 2022, right, the first quarter of 2022, U.S. economy shrank by 1.6%, and an economic depression hits at 1.4%. And Biden administration said no. If economy is shrinking by 1.6%, that's just economic downturn, not depression.
Okay.
That's the exact numbers. And now by doing that, right, you effectively have messed with world economy,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
you just downplayed a very severe problem,
That's correct.
right?
Yeah.
Because if an economy is shrinking 1.6% every quarter, there is not much quarters left, right? But I'm not saying Biden or one particular person, in
I
particular,
mean, it is
but
what
I'm
we
just saying.
do. It is what the Fed does here. I mean, your critique is really of the Fed,
It's like
the
this,
operation of
right?
the Fed and its impact on the global economy. How your critique is really of the United States Fed, Federal Reserve
Mm-hmm.
Chairman, and the board, and the Federal Reserve Board, and their impact on global
Mm-hmm.
economies. There's no question that it
Well, there was this whole
just as
discussion
sheriff.
of Biden. Yeah, but there was this whole discussion of Biden administration asking the Fed that could we redefine economic downturn in you know instead of economic recession. Like, the fact is, at the end of the day, like, they did lie to people, right? Because I don't know why, but I think they forgot that it affected real people worldwide.
Yeah, I don't think they forgot that. I mean, I think that whatever they did was a gambit, knowing that that was
Hmm.
going to happen. And that's the impact that a country like ours has on the rest of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah. So how about you folks be more responsible next time?
Yeah, but you have got to come to America to understand why we're so
No,
damn
I'm
irresponsible.
happy here.
I think once you spend some time out here, you'll find out why
Yeah,
we're so damn irresponsible.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just, yeah, it is that way, and like I can understand your point of view, of just living there to see the experience, the American experience,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah.
Like getting billed millions for stubbing your toe.
Yeah.
I don't know, right?
Now you're talking about
Like,
our healthcare system and our healthcare costs. You're right about that.
right? It is insane.
It is. Um,
Yeah.
but it's insane for particular reasons.
Hmm.
And some of those reasons have to do with the role that we've set
Just greed.
ourselves. Yes,
I would say it's
absolutely.
just greed. That's all it
Well,
is.
absolutely. I mean, do you need to have as much money as Elon Musk? You don't.
No.
No. I mean, that is the simple answer is you don't need that.
Hmm.
But we don't have one thing
Hmm.
that we don't have anymore in this country is we don't have philanthropists. We don't have philanthropy.
I mean, you do have them,
We don't have it like
but
yeah, but
it's in the air quotes,
yeah, exactly. It's in the air quotes. That's the best way to put it.
right?
Yeah, you mind if I quote that at some point in time? Because you're right about
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
it's definitely in the air quotes. Um, the other thing is about this country is that we've really, Ganesh, only had about 40 years in this country of anything that represents a real middle class. And that came in the wake of the New Deal, all the way up through the impact of Reagan's tax cuts. So you really
Hmm.
get something between the 40s and the 80s, okay,
Hmm.
maybe late 80s. And then the middle class is really disappearing after that. This used to be
Hmm.
a country where you had private sector and public sector unions. The
Yeah.
minority of workers in this country now belong to a union and have
Hmm.
somehow been deluded to think that the way that they can get their wages to increase is to
Hmm.
argue for increased wages for themselves as individuals. That never works.
Hmm.
It never works.
Yeah, that
You're
never
just
works.
fired. You're just fired. That's all there is when
Yeah.
you walk in.
Yeah.
You have to have a union.
That whole narrative is so dumb, right?
It's extremely dumb, but people have bought into it.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
problem,
Even in India, it's the same thing.
yeah,
Even in India,
and the other
you
problem
know.
with our country too.
But Nicholas, do you also feel like governments absolutely hate unions because it brings people together?
Yeah,
It creates a force that
yeah, I
is
do, and
helping to
I
the
think
government
there
itself.
was no better sign of that than when I was a kid, and the Reagan administration shut down the air traffic controllers union. Now there were a lot of union workers who voted for Reagan; they believed in him, and they lost their unions during and as a result of his administration. Didn't stop them
Yeah.
for continuing to vote for the same nonsense. But
Hmm.
he when he broke the air traffic controllers, that was a signal to every other union in this country. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
it's not going to go down like this anymore. You're not, and really, it was one of the things that's consistent in this country is that union membership, when it was at its height in this country, was
Hmm.
when middle class belonging was at
Yeah.
its height. Those two
Hmm.
things are consistent. And the drop off of
Yeah.
union membership has gone along with the drop off in the middle class in this country.
Hmm.
There are winners in this
Yeah.
society and there are losers in this society. And so you ask yourself, how is it that a
So you
guy,
mean to say there are politicians and then there are people
yeah, why not? Yeah, there are people, are if you define politicians as people who get
as the winners,
600% on a trade, then I would say that, yes, winners.
right?
Yes, right.
They're the absolute winners in any situation,
That's correct.
right? No matter if it's benefiting people or if it's like putting people more down.
Right. That's correct.
Let me ask you this, Nicholas, because you're well versed in academics, and of course, you understand government so much better. Do you think that the whole frame of government, like how it's formed, is anti-human evolutionary? Because it doesn't let people unite, because every government is keen on dividing people, because that's how they will survive, even if they do some bad shit. They don't want to um, you know every government always looks to control people through money, property, and just freedom, right? Do you think this government frame is anti-evolutionary, because we are not going to evolve from here, because
I
the
wouldn't,
government is just stopping us at this
yeah,
point of
I
time?
don't know if I would, I think I understand where you're coming from with the term anti evolutionary.
Because look at what they did to the crypto. They said,
Yeah,
crypto can be used to launder money and trade narcotics. Guess what? That's what even American dollar can be done too,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
but every government is afraid of crypto.
yeah,
Government is afraid of not getting information on people,
yeah,
like dirt on people,
yeah.
and they're definitely afraid of people uniting.
Yeah, I think that the word that I would use, I'm not disagreeing
Mhm,
with your word, by the way.
mhm,
I agree with what I think you're getting at. But I think the word that I would use is immoral. And I don't mean
yeah.
that in a religious sense. I mean
Mhm,
that in a deeper spiritual sense. And what I'm
mhm,
talking about is respect for the human personality when I
mhm,
use the term moral, the respect
mhm,
for all human personality. And I do
mhm.
think that a lot of our governments do create laws that are
Mhm.
immoral and that are
Yeah.
about what you suggest, which is control.
Mhm,
You know, what we've seen this recent struggle here over the reproductive rights of women in
Hmm.
our country. It's not that anybody wants children to be aborted.
Yeah.
That's not what's happening here. What's
Hmm.
happening is, do women control their own bodies, and are they able to make decisions over their own bodies or not? Or
Hmm.
do 80-year-old men in Congress get to make those decisions?
Hmm.
And what is a more moral choice?
Hmm.
Do does anybody who loves anybody else, no matter their gender, get
Hmm.
to love and marry them openly without the
Hmm.
fear of violence or repression? What is the
Hmm.
moral choice? It doesn't have anything to do with anything else. So I think that
Hmm.
those are the terms that I would use. And I do think that where I pick you up on evolutionary is, I think globally,
Hmm.
as people, you and I, sitting across all these, we're like 12 and a half hours apart from where we are
Hmm.
right now having this conversation. You and I could probably come to agreement on a lot of things a lot more easily. I think we have in this podcast.
Yeah.
People who lead us, only because I don't have any interest in repressing you, and you don't have
Yeah.
any interest in repressing me, and because I
Hmm.
respect your human personality and you respect
Hmm.
my human personality.
Yeah.
If we
And
start
also,
with
I think,
that, we can do a lot.
yeah. And also, I think it's like there is this universal recognition that you are human too,
You are human.
not an
That's
asset,
that's correct. Not an asset. Not somebody
right?
who's going to yield me
Hmm.
600% profit. Not somebody to be trafficked or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
Right.
And if I go into the world, when I see you, when I
Hmm.
encounter you, with that on my mind, that is
Hmm.
a higher evolutionary state, as you suggest. I think
Right.
that is where we should be.
Hmm. Because instead of fighting with each other, I
Yes.
mean, that will never stop. Um,
Yes, but I'm not interested in fighting with you. I may have a
yeah,
disagreement
exactly.
with you, but I'm not interested in
Hmm.
fighting with you. I'm not interested in jailing you. I'm not interested in
Yeah.
repressing you. I am interested in breaking bread with you and
Hmm.
talking with
Yeah.
you as we have done here. That
Hmm.
is the human evolutionary and moral thing that I think that you're getting to.
Right. I mean, it's like this, right? There is this Indian proverb that says, um, conflict only when necessary,
That's, yeah, I'm with that. I love
right?
that. That's beautiful.
And if governments ask themselves, like, is it necessary really to fight on this particular case? No, then let it go. Instead of getting into arms race, um, and finding ways of destroying each other more efficiently,
Right. Which is what happens. You're right.
right?
Yeah.
And of course there are a lot of people who argue that arms race is what led to a lot of industrial evolution. um,
But,
and let me tell you this, right? If you want to use this, um, when you talk to British English people, and when you talk about them colonizing India for 200 years, right?
mhm.
They say that we gave railways to India.
Yes, I hear that. I've heard that
um,
before. And
right.
administration and all these other
Uh-huh.
kinds of things. Because guess what?
Yeah.
India didn't have a civilization that had been there for thousands of
Yeah.
years before the
Thousands
British,
of
right?
years.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
we forgot about that, right?
So the counter for that is like Australia, England, and Canada also got railways
Right.
without getting fucked over for 200 years.
That's right. Wow, I
Right.
wonder how that happened.
Yeah, I wonder how that happened.
Yeah.
In India's railway, it's very interesting. It was if you look at the British railway network, right?
Hmm.
It was designed to carry, um, you know, precious materials from inside the land to the ports. That was the railway system. And uh, it if let's say you were the contractor, right, of a railway network,
Hmm.
you would get paid from Indian tax money, right, at Indian risk. So for example, if somebody died, right, while building the tracks,
Hmm.
you would get paid, not the employee. You would get paid.
Wow.
And you would get paid 5 times. So it cost 5 times more to lay a mile of track as it would cost in Canada or Australia in the same time.
Wow.
So it's like, Yeah, there are countries who achieved good railway networks without getting fucked for 200 years.
Yes,
And arms race is also same, right?
that's right.
Like we can achieve those technological advancement without threatening to kill each other,
Right, right.
right?
Well, think about two indigenous people here in this country
Yeah.
who had everything taken away from them because some of uh, the founders of this country, Jefferson wrote about this
Hmm.
actually, would say things like they don't know how to farm,
Hmm.
right? Okay,
Sure,
so
why not?
and here we are in 2024 with a lot
Yeah.
of our folks. My son
Uh-huh.
is a soil scientist, so I get a lot of this information. But we have a lot of
Hmm.
people here now in 2024 going, you know what? Maybe the best way to farm
Is not to
sustainably,
farm. Yeah.
it was the way that American
Uh
Indians did it, right?
yeah,
Because
exactly.
guess what? They knew how to farm. They had been doing it for thousands of years.
Yes.
So it's the same sort of thing. I've heard that actually before uh, from folks who I can only describe as imperialists and bigots. That
Hmm.
India received trains, its administrative system,
Yeah,
etc.,
yeah, definitely.
from the British because obviously
Yeah.
India didn't know what to do until the
Yeah.
British came along. Yeah, which
Yes.
is utterly laughable.
Yeah.
But this is also something that we suffer from in this country. Would you have suffered
Yes.
from that colonial mindset? Uh,
Hmm.
we also use terms like white supremacist thinking, which
Yeah.
we are burdened with in this country too.
Hmm.
And this country is one of the things we didn't talk about here is the fact that there's a lot of fear in this country
Hmm.
right now that
Yeah.
is motivating our politics about the loss of a white majority in this country because that
Hmm.
is approaching. It is right around the corner. And this country
Hmm.
is much more diverse than
Hmm.
people want to give it credit for being. We have
Yeah.
many more mixed race persons
Hmm.
in this country, and
Than in any other place in the world, probably.
yeah, that probably yeah, and
Yeah.
this has also happened in Europe too, and this is what
Yeah.
has prompted a lot of the fear and racial violence.
Well, let's not talk about Europe. That's a whole different thing.
This is why you've seen the rise of extremism again in Europe.
Well, I think it's justified at this point of time
Justify how?
because yeah, because I come to a land, I say you follow my law or I'll kill you. Yeah, you say yeah, man. Like fuck you.
Well, it was always inevitable that if
Hmm.
you colonize the world, let's say India, for
Hmm.
example, you colonize India and you extract wealth from India, all kinds of wealth,
Hmm.
right? And you make England the center,
Hmm.
and essentially you make India the exploited periphery, right?
Yeah.
That at some point in time, just out of economic sense, people are going to say, "Well, let me go where the money is." So
Hmm.
I'm in India, but
Uh-huh.
at some point in time, until we get our act together, which you have done, by
Hmm.
the way, okay.
Hmm.
But at some point in time, until we get our act together, we're going to go
Hmm.
to England and earn a dollar because that's where all of
Yeah.
our wealth from our country went,
Hmm.
right? So if I want a good
Yeah.
education, if I want to earn, etc., I'm going to go. And this is what
Hmm.
people have done in the United States. So the United States has fomented war around the world and left countries in shambles.
Did you?
So well, the answer to that. Is still doing it, and I mean, it's what imperialism is, and so it makes sense that people at some point are going to say, "Well, okay, this is where the wealth is. Let's go.
Yeah.
I can't earn."
No, I think they became liberal too quickly without understanding the consequences. They're like everybody is welcome until everybody was the majority.
Yeah, we have a very complicated history in this country of
No,
anti-immigration.
I was talking
Oh,
about
Europe?
Europe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Perhaps,
yeah,
perhaps, um,
yeah. Because they were like everybody is welcome,
perhaps.
and now everybody is a majority.
Right. But the thing was that this was going to be the consequence of
Yeah,
England being able to say that the sun never sets, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Okay, fine.
because the God himself didn't trust British and dark.
Yeah. So right. So at some point in time, everybody's coming. Get ready.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I like Poland's approach to it, right?
Mhm.
They're like, you can come here, live here, do whatever you want, but you don't get to tell us what we do because we are the original people of this, land.
Yes, but Poland does not have a
Hmm.
history
Yeah.
vis-a-vis, say, India that
Hmm.
England has of brutal murder, repression, colonialism,
Yes.
etc. It does not have that history. And so
Yeah.
Poland doesn't feel any guilt with respect
Hmm.
to this.
Exactly.
And this is kind of where this is an interesting phenomenon, by the way, too, Ganesh. It's sort of where your racial and national identity positionality changes depending
Hmm.
upon where you go. So,
Yeah.
as somebody from Bangalore in Poland,
Hmm.
you have a different positionality than someone from
Yeah.
Bangalore in London. It's a completely
Yeah.
different thing. This also happens to me as an African American. So, while say England or France or Spain or Portugal did what they did in Africa, when I go
Hmm.
someplace like say France,
Yeah.
I don't the French don't have any issues with me as an African American because
Hmm.
my racial positionality has changed. They don't
Hmm.
have any sense of guilt with respect to me,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, and my relationship to them changes. My relationship is not the same to every European or
Yeah.
every European American, even necessarily,
Yeah.
because that is just
Yeah.
simply what happens when you travel and you move around the world.
Yeah. And when white people move, they are called expatriates,
Yes. And when we move,
migrants.
migrant. Yeah, that's right. There you go.
That's the most nonsensical approach I've seen.
Ganesh, do
Right.
you know who the most successful migrants are right now to the United States of America?
Indians.
No, actually, you
Indians.
have been eclipsed by Nigerians.
Mm.
There's a brain drain
Better
from
scammers.
Nigeria. What's that?
Better scammers.
Better scammers. Well, but
Yeah.
that presumes that we're calling anybody a scammer, and I would not.
Yeah, Indians are
Yeah,
scammers. Like
I
Indian
would.
do
You would
scam
never hear
people.
that come out of my mouth. I don't have the
Yeah, because
personality to say that, and I would.
exactly you're not in the position to say that. But I can.
I'm going to leave that in your hands. I want nothing to do
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah, there are scam Indians, like every place else.
Well, everybody's hustling.
Um
I mean, we got scam America's American scam. That's what we do. You don't want us migrating around the world. We're going to scam everything from you. Sell you.
we are gonna expatriate.
I mean, listen, an American's going to come to Bangalore and sell you a national monument that you've had there for 3,000 years. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
scammers too.
Yes, but you're just a more classic scammers.
I don't know. I don't know about the classy part, dude. Yeah.
Meaning, you get away with lot more money than us.
So in this case, what you're talking about is just the difference between what we call white collar crime and blue collar crime. That's it.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's like from petty theft to like scamming a bank.
You know what, Ganesh? I'm glad you brought this up. Actually, I know we're joking, but although there's a little bit of truth in what we're joking about, but
Yeah.
one of the things that came up for me in writing this novel was if I had a character who wanted to deal with very powerful interests who were doing
Hmm.
things like sex trafficking, right? The same
Yeah.
thing is happening in my novel about homelessness. How would they go about doing it? A strictly violent approach doesn't work. Okay, you're
Yeah.
outnumbered, and so
Hmm.
I do have, so my book gets labeled by Amazon under heist crime because without giving the plot away, my character does say, okay, uh, maybe I'll scam. So seriously, this happens in the novel because my thinking is,
Good.
if you really want to get to somebody who's perpetrating
Uh-huh.
a high crime like this, the
Hmm.
most effective way to get to them is get to their money. That's how you can truly bring them to their knees.
Yeah.
So if you can pull
I
that
mean,
off, yeah,
you took the ISIS way. You know
that's
how we
correct.
killed ISIS, right?
Yeah,
We just bombed their banks.
there you go. That's the way to do it.
That's where I think you draw the
That's where I'm
inspiration.
going. That's exactly where I'm going. Yeah,
Nice, and that's a very logical approach, right?
I think so.
Yeah, because
I was seeking a
um,
nonviolent approach, and it
mhm,
turned into, oh, this makes a lot of sense, and to do
yeah,
it within the context that I have in the novel of crypto. So crypto is discussed in the book as well,
yeah.
as both a thing for economic freedom and a
Uh-huh.
thing for laundering
Like,
money.
let me ask you this: did you take inspiration from how US took yachts from the Russian billionaires
Yes, I did.
as an example?
Yes, I did. Yeah, yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, because that phenomena has been happening out here. So we've had oligarchs buying property out here as a way to launder their money.
I think you guys are concentrating on the wrong kind of people.
In what sense?
You need to look at Chinese,
Oh,
not Russian.
sure, they definitely are. They definitely are.
Look at Hollywood, right?
For
Look
sure.
at Hollywood right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, do you remember that movie, The Interview?
Yes, I do. It wasn't a good
Do you think
movie.
they could do that? Yeah. Do you think they could do that today?
Yeah, I mean, minus all of the anal sex jokes. Yeah, they pulled that off. That was such a horrible movie. It was like one long anal sex joke.
Yeah, but it I think it was intended to be that way.
Yeah, I think so too. I also
Do you
think
think
the
it's
guys who
possible
made that
today?
movie were high while they were doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not possible today because the Chinese would say no, you can't do that,
probably. Probably.
right?
Yeah,
I don't think that's a possibility today. In terms of, if you look at who owns Hollywood and you say, can we do that? And the owners of Hollywood say no, definitely not,
probably.
right?
Yeah, they would probably say
Because
that.
you're hurting sentiments of my business partner.
Yes, they would probably say that. Yeah. And they're not the only industry, by the way, where that something like that would be said.
Well, the chicken industry
Y-
of US.
Yeah, I mean, consider that for many years in this country, we never talked about the Japanese genocide in Manchuria because the Japanese were trading partners. We still don't talk about it. There
Hmm.
are things that we do turn a blind eye to with
Yeah,
our trading partners.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
There are one too many instances of that,
there unfortunately are. Yeah,
right?
but that's what happens when you have a world of butchers.
Yeah, I mean, you guys went to war with a country for destroying two buildings. So,
Yes, that's
yeah,
right. We did. Yeah, and we went to war with the wrong country for
yeah.
destroying two buildings.
Guess what? Because you guys can't spell the countries' names.
That actually is a real problem in this country,
Hmm.
particularly when American citizens are misinformed. At the time that that happened, so I grew up in San Francisco. I live in Oakland now, but I grew up in San Francisco, and I grew up in a neighborhood that had a lot of, at the time, a lot of Iranian American businesses.
Thank you for not
And
saying Middle Eastern people.
all right. And what happened was that Americans, so people lash out, right?
Yeah,
And one of the things that happened was there were Iranian American businesses
hmm,
that had their storefronts trashed and had to
yeah,
put up signs saying, "We're Iranians, not Iraqis," because Americans tend to go, "Okay, it's just it starts with an I."
yeah,
The
yeah.
first three
And
letters
it
are
has an
IRA,
R.
and it has an R and
Yeah,
it has an A. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
That's
So
all.
so let's go for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're surprised. I'm surprised we didn't hit businesses owned by people from India because you've got an I in there as well. It starts
I
with an I.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Starts with right.
Yeah.
People look the
It's
same.
close enough,
Yeah.
right? Isn't it in the Middle East too? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
definitely.
very ignorant here
Yeah.
about the map. But
Hmm.
racial violence has always been predicated on
You know
ignorance.
what? If I was an Iranian, I would, below that note, I would say learn your geography, idiots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would too. But then they'd probably smash your business for calling them an idiot. So, because that's the thing is that
Yeah.
in America we reserve the right to sort of exalt our ignorance. It's a it's a badge of honor, not to know. Being
Yeah.
stupid is kind of misinformed is kind of a badge of honor.
Yeah. um Also, it's like, it gets weirder as the time passes, because if you look at Instagram, or any social media, it's essentially Americans making fun of Americans for not knowing geography or mathematics.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Well, the other way to handle that is to improve the school system, to actually put tax dollars into improving the school system.
Well, then people would
And
be intelligent and they would start questioning the government system.
yeah,
So we
yeah,
should not do that.
yeah, yeah. President Eisenhower, former general in World War II, talked about that, and in fact laid out what he compared costs of bombs with
Mhm.
costs of repairing schools, and so
Well, you don't do that.
was the last American president to ever do that. Hasn't been done
See,
since.
I told you.
Yeah,
I told you.
yeah.
Because it's far more easier to export bombs than schools.
Apparently,
Yeah.
yeah. Apparently,
And that's where we're heading.
yeah. That is where we're heading.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for
Man,
being
it's been
here.
great talking to you.
Um, yes, same
You're an
here.
amazing host. You
Um,
really are.
Thank you so much, despite my cold. Thank you so much. Despite my sucky voice, thank you for being
Oh,
here.
it's all right.
Um, and if people wanted to, buy a book, where could they? Or, if they wanted to find you, where could they?
So they can find me at nicholasbaham.com. That's my website. The book, The People's Detective, a Sonny Trueheart mystery, is available on Amazon. If we want to put money back into the pockets of billionaires, we can shop through Amazon. But it's also available through thrift books, bookshop.org. Look, it's global shipping, so you can get it anywhere.
Hmm.
Published by Bootstrap Publications. Um,
Hmm.
and again, I'd welcome. I'm going to put this up when the interview is ready. I'm going to put it up on my website as my
Hmm.
podcast, one of my podcast appearances. If people want to come by, drop by and see that, sign up for my. Um, I have a Substack.
Hmm.
People can sign up for after they get on my website. They can find that. And I'd love to get some international readership and critique. Find
Hmm.
out if people learn a little something about America and places
Yeah.
like Oakland, California, by reading the novel
Hmm.
The People's Detective, out on Bootstrap Publications.
And guys, all the links will be in the description. So just take a look at, and if you really think that you need to talk to Nicholas, yeah, his website will be in the link, and you can get in touch with
Yeah,
him.
my email's on there.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, and he did a very bad job of selling himself. Um,
Did I?
he's a very academically achieved, established person. Yeah, so just go to his website, and you will be blown away of what he has done in,
Yeah,
in his life.
my academic books are going to be on there too. So I have to list
Yeah.
that page so you can see the full range of things that I've done, both the
Hmm.
novel and things that are more academic. I appreciate that, Ganesh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, he's undersold himself throughout the episode. So just go to his link and see.
Ganesh, are
Because
you telling me to be more like a congressperson?
I'm telling you to be the congressperson, not
All
like.
right. All right.
Right. Yeah. So this is the end of the episode. Um, and if we have somehow managed to offend you, uh, yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
and until next episode, take care and yeah, be peaceful.